Une question que j'ai pour toi, Greg, c'est par rapport à comment ça marche avec, selon les personnes avec qui on échange. Par exemple, si en France, on va beaucoup parler des athées, et les athées aiment avoir une façon raisonnée pour arriver à leur façon de penser à des choses. Après, on a aussi beaucoup de musulmans, on a aussi des hindous, et pas tout le monde a les mêmes approches et les mêmes réactions à la façon raisonnée. Donc, comment tu vois les tactiques dans ce contexte-là?
Mhm. Oh, this is a good question, and in a sense, fortunately for French Christians, the biggest problem you're going to run into is atheism or materialism or something like that. These are all together in one set of ideas. And because atheists value reason, they follow from the Enlightenment, so to speak, and they think that they're the bright ones, the reasonable ones. We actually have a similar epistemology, a way of knowing things. You know, we both believe in reason, and I think that the smart money rationally is on Christianity. We have a common ground about the way we think. So for the most part, the use of tactics in the French environment is going to be a lot easier than people in other environments. Even in the States, you have atheists, but it isn't the main thing. What you have is you have people that are all over the spectrum and think all kinds. They don't know how to think carefully about anything. At least atheists pride themselves in their rational thinking, and so make an attempt. Now they make all kinds of mistakes. Nevertheless, at least you have some common ground there. Now I think actually Muslims are similar though, because Muslims actually believe their belief is true. They think their God is the true God, and Islam is the true religion, and their prophet is the true prophet. And so they are also, in a certain sense, very similar in the way they think about things to the atheists, except for their content of their belief is different. And they also have a revelation that is really important to them. Okay. So atheists have no well, atheistic revelation is science. Science says, therefore it's true. So that's their religion. That's their inspired text, science, where Muslims have the Quran and some other writings that are their inspired texts, and those are critical. Okay, so in a certain sense, they're like Christians. Christians care about reasoning, but they also realize that we can't get all our information about God just by looking around and reasoning. God has to reveal certain things to us. And so the scripture is the place where that's done. So, in a certain sense, we are actually much more like Muslims than we are like atheists, right? So the distinction here is that given the fact that Muslims emphasize their revelation so much, in order to deal with that, we have to understand some things about their revelation and their belief system, and to address that. But when we do that, we address it with the tactical game plan and in the tactical way. Okay. And in fact, there are Muslim apologists, not so many of them, but they do exist. That is, they're giving reasons why they think Islam is the true religion and Christianity and whatever. Believing in the Trinity is irrational in their mind. Well, that's because they misunderstand the Trinity. The Trinity is not irrational. It's not contradictory. It's weird, but it's not contradictory if it's properly understood. And to some degree, our questions with the Muslim are to help them understand some things that we believe, so they get it correct and not incorrect. Many Muslim objections to Christianity are a result of a false understanding of what Christianity teaches. Okay. Now, when it comes to Hindus, you're right, this is different because they have, in many ways, a very different way of thinking about things. All right. Or Buddhist as well. All right. So I don't deal with Hindus and Buddhists hardly at all. But the advantage that we have in speaking to anyone in any circumstance with any religious belief, and this I got from Francis Schaeffer, writer who died in the 80s, that it turns out that they're all human beings. And being human They are made in the image of God, as a matter of fact. And they have to live in the world that God made. And so I call this concept then bumping into reality, because reality is what wounds you if you don't take it seriously, right? So everyone has to live in the world that God made, and they are made in the image of God. And so there are certain things they cannot escape. Okay. And consequently, for example, Hindus believe, if Vedantic Hinduism holds that all of reality as we perceive it is just an illusion. Okay. It's just an illusion. But nobody lives that way, even Hindus. They treat reality as if it's real. Because it is. And so it's such a strange thing. Their belief contradicts our common experience of reality. And so you have to kind of deny reality in order to hold the belief. Anyway, there's something we can work with the proper questions. Okay. So across the board, the fact that humans are made in the image of God, and they have to live in the world that God made for them, lets us know that there is common ground that we have that we can work from. I talk about this in the tactics book, and there, like 4 years ago, I had an updated edition, 10th anniversary edition, and I added a chapter called Inside Out. And that's where the tactic Inside Out, where we talk about this idea that God has placed things inside of us that even when we believe a different worldview, end up coming out and bear testimony to the truth of Christianity and the truth of the world as it really is. So we have to be sensitive to our audience, but that doesn't change the game plan at all, nor the confidence. It changes the nature of the questions, but it doesn't change the confidence that we have that we can speak to them as fellow human beings and not as alien creatures who have no concept, no ability to conceptualize what we're talking about. They do. They're human beings. And we have common human nature that we can appeal to, and a reasonable faculty that allows us to work through these issues.